Yay. We have a lot of information. We want to make sure we get through it. Otherwise, we'll have to make you come back again. So, come on down. Oh, Ron Stover. Is that Ron? Ron, you're here. I didn't think you were coming.
He is coming.
Turn on. Okay. I guess I'm going to have to use my thing.
All right, we're going to get started because we have a lot of information. But you know what I do if there's ever a captive audience that I have here. I will do announcements. Thank you very much. This Sunday, if you happen to be around, it's going to be a big one. We have our Thanksgiving celebration. It's, oh my gosh, it's Elizabeth's birthday. I have great ears. I hear everything, just in case. You guys, just to fill you in on that, I hear everything. So that means when you're talking nicely about me, I hear that as well. This Sunday, our wonderful Doug Klein's last Sunday playing our music. So come on. He says, we were rocking last Sunday. He says it's going to even be more this Sunday. So I'm like, what? What?
Nobody's going to do it.
So we're going to do that, and then afterwards we're having our potluck Thanksgiving celebration. Then Wednesday, before Thanksgiving.
First Tuesday, women are meeting at Reverend Diane's house to put our care packages together for the Women's Center, for the Domestic Violence Center for women who have had to flee from domestic violence. So we're putting together care packages for them. So Reverend Diane's house, if you don't have her number, ask me later. All right, because I can't tell you how to get there.
And it's in the practitioner thing.
It's in the practitioner folder, yeah.
So she'll give you the address.
And then on Wednesday night, we're going to have a labyrinth walk. We have a beautiful labyrinth that fills the whole room, and we will walk the labyrinth that night and have a sweet discussion after, sharing our findings or whatever we want to share. We don't have to share, but it's a beautiful experience to walk the labyrinth if you've never.
How many of you have walked a labyrinth? Yeah,
oh, good. Yeah.
Good.
All right, good.
Beautiful.
We do a labyrinth walk here every month. The next one will be on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, there you go. And then we have on December 2nd is our wonderful annual tree decorating party that night. So that's on a Monday at 6 o'clock. And then on the 7th, we're having our annual, but it's actually our first bazaar.
Bazaar. We are having our first bazaar.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
But you talk about it.
What do you want me to say? We're having some amazing artists and food and music, and it'll be Saturday from 9 to 4. And if you have other questions about it, talk to Emma Leidendecker, who is not here tonight. Yeah, bring your friends, spread the word. There's flyers out there. Please
it's a wonderful way to let people get to know the center when there's an event such as like the Labyrinth, or last night we had Jeevan with the Kirtan. It was just wonderful. It's always a nice opportunity where people that don't want to come on a Sunday necessarily because it might be too churchy or something, or whatever they think about Sundays. Whatever it is, we have other opportunities for people to come. Like tonight, for instance, is a great opportunity. Okay.
All right.
We're going to let them pop in so that we can
come on in.
So we can do a little heart warm up here.
We're going to do a heart coherence before we start, because this is one of the things we learned there. Greg Braden is he's not affiliated with the Heart Math Institute, but he with their permission, he does his own type of heart coherence, and I think it's really powerful and it's easy. And we're going to talk about it more later, but I thought we'd do one just before we start, before we do our opening treatment. So let's just take a moment.
And if somebody's new, this is Rev Rita, and I'm Reverend Patrick. I always assume everyone knows this, but that's not always the truth.
Well, I don't know everybody, but we'll introduce later. Okay, so let's just take a moment to, first thing we do is to shift focus, which is to just settle in and close our eyes and just leave the distractions of the outside world. And then we just take a moment to center into our heart. Some people like to touch their heart to get there. But just taking deep breaths very slow, deep breaths. 6 counts in and 6 counts out. And then the best way to get to your heart is to bring up an emotion. And the easiest to bring up are those of gratitude, compassion, appreciation, and caring. And the best way to do that is to sometimes just reflect on a experience you've had that brings that emotion up. A person you love, a pet you love, experience that you've had that makes you feel grateful or makes you feel compassionate. And just continue to just stay in this space and breathing slowly. And we'll just stay there for a couple of minutes. And so just staying in this place of the heart, which is really the divine self, the amazing magnificence that we are, the power that we are, the light that we are, the love that we are. And I speak my word from that place within me, knowing that tonight is filled with that beautiful, amazing energy of the heart. And that everything that is spoken here comes from that place, and everything that is heard from that place, that beautiful, amazing place of the heart, place of love. And I know that tonight unfolds in all its perfection, and that whatever we came here to receive, we've already received. And whatever we've come here to give, we've really already given. And that we are here together as one heart to lift this planet in consciousness in our coherence together here and our light. And I know that's what we do. So I am grateful in advance for everything that transpires, knowing it is a perfect flow. I get out of the way and let just spirit pour through everything that we do here. As I just release my word, I let it go as we affirm together. And so it is. That was really nice.
Thank you, Rita.
Yeah.
It's a great way to start.
That's something you can do all the time, and it only takes like 2 to 3 minutes. So if you find yourself in a stressful situation, if you just do that, you get better and better at it. And it is very calming and very, well, we'll talk about it more later, but it's a tool that we have that we can use that's really simple. So welcome.
There's a couple of logistics about
Right.
the bathroom and
yeah.
stuff I passed over. Bathrooms are open and they're in the fairway to the left if you went out there. And tonight's all about a love offering, so the baskets are out there to continue evenings like this. And
I didn't check.
most important was the bathroom for everyone. And just to let you know, most likely we won't stop for a break because we feel that it kind of dismantles the energy sometimes.
So if you have to go.
So just feel free, no raising your hand. We're okay if you get up. We won't feel like you're insulted.
Just to give you some background, so Patrick and I had this amazing opportunity. We actually went to one of these last year, but this one was like pretty spectacular because there were six keynotes And they were more than keynotes, they gave workshops. So we were able, it was called Scientists, Mystics, and Sages. And I think that it was, for me, it was so powerful because it brought spirituality and science together as one thing. And it brought the mysticism and the facts and the science all together, and made for an amazing fight. It was very intense. We had 5 days of 12-hour days of just information. And so we were able to meet with, and we'll go through them all separately, but Greg Braden is the one on the left, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is next to him, and then Anita Morjani, who was the only woman. Somebody has said she was the only woman there, but she was the only woman there, and she was amazed by that too. And then somebody that might not be as well known to people is Todd Ovakites, who is just a genius. And then Dr. Amit Goswami, who you might know, if you see his picture, he's more familiar looking from the top picture with the little hat on, but he's been in a lot of films like What the Bleep Do We Know, and all of that. And then Dr. Joe Dispenza, who looks like he's asleep, but but
He's meditating. That's pretty much.
And the man on the right is Ilan, and Ilan is the producer of Greg Braden's events, and yeah, he's amazing, and he keeps everybody together. And so.
And he took us through meditation himself, and it was interesting because you're thinking, oh, the facilitator has their little position, but he took us into a heart meditation one day. I went up to, and it really took us down. I went up to him, I go, are you going to continue doing this? Because you're really very, very powerful at this. Next thing we know, we got music going in the morning, and that's all you needed to do was to invite him, and he just did these morning meditations.
Yeah, it was interesting because we always start our meetings and stuff with a spiritual mind treatment or an invocation of some kind, and he did the same thing. He didn't call it that, but he would start and calm everybody down and call the spirit, up and through us, and we're all here, and it was really cool. Anyway, so we have a disclaimer. This is how many people were there, 1,200 people.
Look at this.
We were expecting 300.
Yeah.
Last time we went, there were 300 people. But there were 1,200 people there, and we managed to sit pretty much further back than the third row but we had to get up at we got up at 4:30, 4 o'clock every morning, and then by the time we were done doing our own spiritual work, we were down there by 6:30 or something, or 6:45 to get online. There were still people online because everybody wanted to sit up front, and we'll talk about that later. So our disclaimer is that all the information comes from us and our notes, and if you want to know more about these giant minds, to go to their websites, and just remember, we're giving you secondhand information because it's what we interpreted, that's all. And so we just want you to know that. But they all have websites, and they all have books, and you can find anything out that they teach online. Yeah.
What was interesting too is about the 1,200 people, there was such judgment. What was beautiful about these events is there's such expectations to some degree when you go to them, and not just myself, but other people had them too, like that we're spiritual people, so nobody will bump into you. But Joe Dispenza Day, people are like, excuse me, and it's like, I thought that everybody was going to be nice here. Now, when it came to Joe Dispenza, they'll knock you down, get out of the way. But there is this expectation. I wish I was kidding. No, but the expectation, we had one of 300 people. And so when we got there, we're like, here we are, we're ready to they said 1,200. And I remember the first thought was, I thought this was going to be a little more intimate than that. That was I went, okay, Patrick, let's go back to what we know. And it was just as intimate with 1,200 as it was with the 300. It was just amazing because of the choice that you make when you go to it.
The thing is, too, and I said this on Sunday, is the beautiful part about this is these things are going on all over the world.
Yes.
There were 32 countries represented there, 32 countries. The new science and what we call new thought, which is the same thing, is so dynamic all over the world. People are just hungry to take their power back and to know who and what they are and what they are possible, what's possible for them in their lives. So Dr. Joe, when he does an advanced retreat, I guess it's called an advanced retreat, yeah. They sell out within like a half hour. They're sold out, and there's 1,200 people going to it. So it's just like there is like a movement happening that we're part of, and that's really exciting to me, that that we're a part of a movement. So the first person that, well,
I'm just going to do this as we go through each person. Who's aware of Greg Braden? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I just put his bio up here and a quote from him, but I didn't do these in particular order. We didn't do them in particular order. The people were like interspersed throughout the time. Like we had a full day with Dr. Joe and a full day with Anita Marjani, but everybody else kind of just came in and out for a couple hours here and there. But if you don't know who Greg Braden is, this quote, I think, tells a lot about him. Preserved in text, traditions, and temple walls, those who came before us left behind nothing less than the description of a quantum principle that we are only beginning to understand today. So his big thing is going into the past, into the ancient civilizations, and finding out what they knew through what's left behind and artifacts and things like that, and bringing that to the modern world, and seeing that the things that we're finding out right now, they knew a long time ago. And so that's his big thing. And he's got so many books. We've got a few in the bookstore, but he's amazing. And what I like about him is he's really down to earth, right? You've been with him. He's like he's fun. He's like down to earth. He likes to make jokes. He's just fun. And one night they had a movie. We didn't go to it because we had these 12-hour days, but they watched The Arrival together. And he said, "Come on, everybody, just come in your pajamas, and we'll have popcorn." And so he's kind of like that. He's very down to earth. So he put this quote up that says, "Who are we but the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and believe?" So change your story and change your life. Do you want to say anything about that?
No, I just think that, this was a reminder of what we teach here. That was another thing that was very interesting for me. I think I said it on Sunday, that New Thought and Science of Mind, it's the exact same thing, that everybody's talking about the exact same thing, and we're just calling it different things for whatever comfort that you feel, because some people don't like the word religion, some people don't like whatever, they don't want the church, it doesn't really matter. But I love this. Who are we but the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and believe? And he is, and we talk about they're down to earth. That's another thing too. Like I said, they became colleagues as you get more and more in this movement and this science of mind spirit. They became colleagues. I was looking at them as, wow. I didn't look at them so much like rock stars. Even though who knew that scientists and everybody, they're treated like rock stars. They're like, "Yeah, Joe." And I was like, wow, it reminded me of like in San Francisco when I went to all the Winterland and all of my rock groups. And I said, who knew that the day would arrive?
Well, anyway, we all have a story.
That we have that story.
We all have a story that we've been told, basically. And that story is our life, if we believe it. And some of us have stories that aren't so great, like things that we think about ourselves. And his thing is, you change your story and you change your life. And we have the capability to change our story at any time. And anyway, he says, we're programmed to feel powerless. That's one of our stories. That's a cultural story. There's a battle for our thoughts and beliefs. He feels, now these are just his opinions, and he will say things sometimes like, "Oh, I don't want you to think this is good or bad or whatever, but this is a fact." He feels that there's a battle for our thoughts and our beliefs, which I would say is probably true. Right? A battle for our bodies. Think about the media and all of that stuff. You do this and you do that, and your body's going to be this. We're wired to self-regulate and regenerate. That's our truth. And the better you know yourself, the less you fear your inner power. So we live our lives, we solve our problems, we choose our relationships, we heal our bodies, we build our future based on the way we think of ourselves. So it's that whole thing of like, do you know who you are? Do you know what you're capable of? Do you know that you can self-regulate, that you can regenerate your body? It's like, and these guys and the quantum science world is proving this on a daily basis, and people are actually doing it. So do you want to say something?
I think the biggest takeaway from all of these people that we worked with, they all said really the same thing, and that is that we are wired to self-regulate and regenerate. And what I loved about them is maybe a lot of people didn't agree, but they were radical. Not radical that I want you to believe what I believe. They were radical in the research that they've done, the data that they have, and that they believe that we can change anything. Huge on the physical level. Huge. I kept, because I, come from a lovely codependent background to some degree. I was like all in protective mode sometimes because they're radical. They think that everything can be changed, and they believe that with every ounce of their entire fiber of their being, and they're not going to apologize for it. And there were people that were sitting in the audience that were experiencing cancer, they were experiencing the dis-ease, and he went straight forward with, this is what I know. This is what I know, and I've got we've got stuff that will back it for you. But I still had that, you know what I'm talking about, the protective quality, like, I hope that they don't feel bad, that, and I'm thinking, oh, Patrick, there's 1,200 people, they don't care what you think.
One of the things he studied is that he's gone up into the Tibetan monasteries.
Right.
You can't get there anymore, but and interviewed some of these people that are like 150, 160 years old, 120 years old, and tried to decide, why have they lasted that long? And one of the biggest things was like compassion. They're compassionate. They're excited about life. What? And they live in a monastery. But there's something to be said about that because they're not inundated with all the stuff that we're inundated with. But he says he's on the 200-year plan, Ruth. Greg is on the 200-year plan. I don't know.
Well,
Okay.
Greg does say that. Greg says that they are in awe of us, believe it or not. They're in awe of us that we can go through this experience called humanity and still work with all of these ideas. So they said, I don't know why they look up so much to us, because it's a little easier for us. We can sit in here, we can meditate for hours. We're not trying to pay the bills at the end of the day. We're not trying to raise the family. We're not trying to, so they have incredible, Greg tells us, respect for our journey as in humanity. And I really felt good about that.
This was really interesting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but they showed robots that they have in certain countries and stuff that are so real. They're programmed. This guy was sitting there with a robot woman, as his girlfriend, a robot child. Really. And then what was the thing in the hand? I didn't put the picture up there.
Well, it's interesting because I have a buddy that lives in New York, and he had an idea for a story about 20 years, 30 years ago, that we were going to eventually all have little chips in our hands, and then we would go to the bank, wow. We would go to the Safeway, wow. And so, and here's the deal. If you don't act upon anything, this is what all of them agreed upon too, we're all in the field together. So these ideas that we're holding on to, that we're holding on to, and we think, oh, well, I'm going to do that later, I'm really not ready. Somebody else is in the field having that same incredible idea. Now he was writing as a science fiction probably 30 years ago. And now there are companies now that actually, when they come in the morning, boom, boom,
They have
all on
chips
their hand.
implanted in
Chips
their hand.
implanted.
So, is it, one
no
thing.
right or wrong. It's
Yeah,
just,
well, Greg always says that. He goes, "There's no right or wrong about this." He goes, "I just want to tell you what's going on." And he says we're being asked to demonize technology, but is how we use the technology. We have a lot going on with technology and with our kids and stuff especially. That's taking away from relationships and stuff like that because their heads are like down like this, and they talked about that. But technology is not a bad thing. It's just the way we use it. And I don't know how you feel about having a robot child, but some mothers might think that's a good idea.
And
I guess you could program it to do what you want. I don't know. And to say I love you, I don't know.
And this one was a little frightening for me personally, but the other ones, guess what their theory, and many of them had the same theory. It's because, and I know I can relate to this, it's about being desensitized.
Right. That was the thing.
It's about being so wanting to be cut off from what's going on that there is an advantage to this thing. And we're not here tonight to go, oh, let's figure out why that we're just here to present what was there. But I thought it was all about being desensitized.
Yeah.
And that's how this is actually being birthed. Because people are saying, you know, I'm really busy. I don't have time for all of that little interaction, emotions. And we're saying feelings is for me, is the healing of everything, of
Right.
everything imaginable.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, if you find something that interests you, you can always go look it up and find out more about it. So we're just giving you like what little tidbits of information that we got. So this was another thing that they talked a lot about was evolution and Darwinian theory and how it's really not, they go into it like really in depth
Quite
about
passionate.
how it really is just a theory and was never really proved. And that there is this story about, it doesn't explain the sudden appearance of a chromosome 2 in our DNA 200,000 years ago. And they have, you know, they have a record of bones and fossils and all this stuff that shows an actual body, I think, of a skeleton of someone. That chromosome 2, which is unique to human lineage of evolution, emerged as a result of a head-to-head fusion of two ancestral chromosomes that remain separate in other primates. So, you know how they always talk about the missing link? When do we go from the blah, blah, blah? Well, chromosome 2 is responsible for our emotions, our sympathy, our empathy, our compassion, self-regulation. It's the thing that we have as humans. And they were actually, there's a theory going on that this was an intervention from somewhere. They don't know it for a fact, but that there had to be something. Why did all of a sudden this chromosome just appear out of nowhere? And so it gives me goosebumps, kind of, that there was some sort of intervention from some higher species. I don't know. Like Greg says, it hasn't been proven yet, but they're trying to figure out where it came from. So, and anyway, so that might be something else that you might want to look into. And Greg Braden has a wonderful show on Gaia called Missing Links, where he goes into all of this stuff really deep. It's an amazing thing, right? There's so many episodes and seasons of it. So then this is the thing we were doing when we started. The heart-brain coherence, and I know a lot of us are familiar with heart-brain coherence. Raise your hands, I know.
Heart math.
Yeah,
blah, blah,
heart
blah,
math
blah.
and all that. So that the heart is a brain. It's a brain. It just is. And it's coupled to a field of information that's not bound by the classical limits of time and space. And he takes us through the what I just took you through before. And he takes it even further, that you can ask your heart anything. That what was interesting is he showed a film first of one of those England's Got Talent, British Got Talents or something, about a really emotional a person getting an award it was just very emotional, and it put you right into your heart. You couldn't help it. It just went right into your heart. And then he said, okay, that's what it feels like to be in your heart. And once you get into your heart, when you really know that you're in your heart, you can ask anything to your heart. And it will give you a direct answer, and it will not be what you get from your brain, which is, pros and cons and a twist around. It will be direct. It'll be direct. So he took us through an exercise where we actually asked our heart a question. And your answer will always be brief. It'll always be direct, and it will always be concise.
And personal.
And personal.
Personal to you.
Yeah, and personal to you. So if you ever want to ask your heart, you go into that place and just really focus on it and just say, what is mine to do right now? It'll be direct if you're asking a question about your life. And you won't get wrapped up in all the other stuff that we get wrapped up in when we're trying to make decisions. So
I was thinking of, it's not in this one, but the civilizations and the Egyptian time, what they did is and you can learn by what people did. They embalmed the body and took care of, they threw the brain out, and they encased the heart. And so I'm thinking, okay, so we could probably learn from people from yesterday, but they because they knew that the heart was the stored everything that we could possibly memory, if they wanted, whatever it was. But how interesting that the brain was so important, and they tossed it and then just took our heart. And I thought, wow, see, we've been knowing this for a while, and this is Greg's thing. Greg loves that whole idea.
And he always prefaces it that he's not a part of the Heart Math Institute, that this is something that
He works with them.
he
yeah.
works with them, but it's
Yeah.
he's not a part of it. So that was actually us doing it. I'm not in that picture. Where are we? We're over here. No, we're over there. We are in this picture somewhere, but you can't see us. There's too
It's
many
really
people.
important. We're going
It
to spend the
looks kinda
next
like
hour to figure out exactly.
Doesn't it look like kind of cultish though?
But since you asked,
This was
there
like
we are right there. You recognize
now,
me by my
obviously,
nose.
we didn't take this picture. This picture was taken by Elon because we were all in the heart-brain coherence thing. But these are the benefits that they find from people that do this. Like, he just said, do it 2 to 3 times a day. Like, just do it. And you'll get yourself into this beautiful, amazing place. Super longevity, super immune response. Yeah, Ruth says, yeah.
Ruth's been having a hand on her heart for a while
direct
there.
access to your heart's intelligence. It triggers 1,300 positive biochemical reactions. Right? It's like this superpower we have that we haven't really utilized totally. Super intuition and super access to the subconscious. People want to know, how do I get to my subconscious? There you go. So,
and you think that when we have problems with our heart, some of it makes sense. We're going to get into decoding with the other doctor later, but it makes sense that if we're not utilizing our heart and we're becoming desensitized by not wanting feeling, that the heart will harden. And there will be arteries, and there will be blood that cannot get to it. It only makes absolute sense as I'm vibrating, just saying it. So this has been really nice, though, by the way, for us, because usually you go on these journeys, right? And Rita and I were talking about this would be so good for our processing because we didn't really have the opportunity there to process. He said, you can sleep at home. You just keep going.
I know. It was just like they really kept us going.
Oh,
And then they
yeah.
would always go over. Like Patrick and I are so particular about time, but they would be like, can we just have 5 more minutes, Elon? Can we just have 10 more minutes, Elon? And then they'd go over all the time. So this, I had to put the picture. I know.
We love Bruce Lipton. Who knows
Let me
Bruce
tell
Lipton?
you
I mean,
why.
yes.
He's like the
he's
best.
changed so much. He is a rock
No,
star.
I'll tell you about him. He said, I'm not leaving until every book is signed, until everybody gets a hug from me. That's just the type of person
That
he
wants
is.
one.
That wants one. And he just stayed around. He did so many book signings so that, and hugs. He didn't even have to buy a book.
I mean, look at his face for a moment. He has this energy why? Because he's so excited about the power that we have. I mean, he walks on, and the moment he walks on, it's
ran
just
out of
like
water.
he's just like, I can't wait to tell all of you who you are and who I am, and everybody just shut up while we find out. He has that energy that I love.
Yeah. So he said, what would your life be like if you learned that you are more powerful than you have ever been taught? And that is his big thing. He, like, where Greg Braden will say, I'm not going to say this is bad or good. He will, like, scream. He'll say, like, he hates pharmaceutical companies so bad. And he just screams about them and yells about them he's like,
I don't know
how
if-
they are
if-
taking advantage
yeah.
of us and all of this stuff. He just, I mean, he's not against medicine. Don't get me wrong. He thinks, but he's just against some
He's
of the things that
passionate
they're doing.
about
He's passionate
the,
about it. And he's passionate about vaccinations, very passionate about it. He thinks that, I'll tell you what his opinion, I actually got to ask the question. That was the question
yeah.
I asked. Because I said that we have people in our center that come to us, they're mothers and fathers that don't want their kids vaccinated. What do you think about that? And he goes, it's criminal!
But what he,
Answer.
but
Forcing them to do it. Because he's not against vaccinations, but he thinks that they shouldn't be put under the skin.
Right.
That if they've taken orally, it's okay. But that children are over-vaccinized. He's definitely said that because why? They interfere with their something.
the whole it's actually the opposite of what they say it's going to do. We just did it because we know a lot of people that are involved in the vaccination thing, and I think he made a really good point. He said, because she said, "What do you think of it?" And he goes, "It's criminal." It's criminal because I know, because I've been studying this for 30 years of my life, and I know. But he is not against oral, because there is a difference when it enters under your skin, and so. But at least that he's not. What I'm saying is he's not afraid to give his opinion, whether it's right or wrong. It doesn't really matter.
Well, he got really ostracized by the medical community. I'm just going to read his
Because of
bio because
this.
it's really good. He's internationally recognized as a leader in bridging science and spirit. Yes. Stem biologist, best-selling author, Biology of the Belief, which is in the back of the room. He produced breakthrough studies on the cell membrane, which revealed that this outer layer of the cell was an organic homologue of a computer chip. So he takes our cell and he says it's just like a computer chip. The cell's equivalent of a brain. His research revealed that the environment operating through the membrane controlled the behavior and physiology of the cell, turning genes on and off. His discoveries ran counter to the established scientific view that life is controlled by the genes, presaged one of today's most important fields of study, the science of epigenetics. So his whole thing is we are not predetermined by our genes. We are not. They're just tendencies, but we're not predetermined by our genes. And he explains why. And I totally recommend his book. It's just, it is very scientific. So if you can't handle that, go listen to his YouTube stuff.
Well,
he's got a great website that really has a lot of free stuff on there, and talks and newsletters and all kinds of stuff.
I don't think he gets mentioned on the honeymoon effect in this, or
No,
did you?
he did write a book called The
The
Honeymoon,
effect, which jumps into the
We don't have that one.
placebo feel that when you're in love, everything is activated, and he knew it for himself because he kept wondering why he didn't have a girlfriend, because and so he said, but once and I remember the first girlfriend that he had that he really loved. She said, "You're too much work," and he just went, "Oh my God!" And there was like a whole awakening that he had, and he went, I might be too much work. And so what he learned from that was there was a honeymoon effect after they got together, and he did some of this and did some of that. That physically, we all know what that's like. I always say it's like you may not have a dime to your name, your life is horrible, and then all of a sudden you meet someone, and you fall in what they call love, right? And then you're like who cares about money? Money's not important. Nothing's important. Just being together is important. But we don't have anywhere to sleep. Does it matter? We could sleep anywhere and your whole body is activated by this love gene. So anyway, he wrote a whole book on it based on the science of that.
I don't read all this stuff, but okay, I'll just go down to this. But the work on quantum mechanics revealed that the universe is not an assembly of physical parts as suggested by Newtonian physics, but is derived from a holistic entanglement of immaterial energy waves. Atoms as energy fields interact with the full spectrum of invisible energy fields that comprise the universe, and intimately entangled with one another and the field in which they are immersed. So whereas we used to think that the world was a material world, and it got actually separated, he said, because of the church. It was like when people started to make these spiritual discoveries about us and our energy and stuff, the church was getting all upset about it. So they said, okay, we're going to separate it. Science is going to be taking care of the body, matter, and the church will take care of the spiritual stuff. And so it kind of got separated. And now it's coming back together. But
well, it's all. He gets very passionate. It's all energy. He said it's all energy. There's no way around it. Why are we trying to make something that's not? It is all energy. And as we call it, it is always in the invisible first and then the material. It always is. Material didn't come first. Energy. We're all energy. That's why when we realize the field that we call the absolute in science of mind, but it's all it's God. And at the end of the day, that's what it's called. He said, we just can't use God because some of you guys are going to get all out of your heads and you won't be able to think. And so, but that's what this energy is, this powerful thing called the field.
So I said, we talked about this already, control above the genes, reveals how behavior and gene activity are controlled by an organism's perception of its environment.
Perception.
So like I'll show this picture later, but he showed all our little, like our membranes and stuff with these little antennas that are going
So
out
cool.
into the field, and they're like picking up information, and then we're interpreting that information. So it's our interpretation of the field. So the difference between the old DNA genetic code and the new epigenetics is that the former notion endorses that genes predetermine and control our physiological and behavioral traits, while epigenetic recognizes that our perceptions of the environment, including our consciousness, actively control our genes, and that we are masters of our own life.
And we've thought of it the opposite, right? Like my body will tell me now how I'm going to feel because it hurts or it does this. But to have that kind of connection, I just stood there one day, I was sitting there, and I got somewhere between like head exploding and in awe and thinking that that all of this was going on inside of me while I was sitting there, and I could direct it like the CEO or the commander-in-chief. You know, I could say, I'm feeling this, can you go in there now and take care of something, because I don't want to memorize all this when you could do it so quick. Got 50 trillion cells working. 50 trillion cells, all your personal 50 trillion. I don't even share those with you. How? Oh my God. You could go 50 trillion cells, go on in. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I bet you do, because that's how infinite intelligence works. Ah, exciting.
50 trillion cells.
Oh,
okay,
there we go.
yeah, he put these two definitions up there. The field is invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. Spirit is invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And that we have 50 trillion cells. Each cell has a purpose.
Each cell has a purpose.
That was like the amazing part. How many scientists are here? Because I'm not a scientist, but I was just like, each one has a purpose.
And a
In fact,
a community that it can go to
I'm
and
gonna
get
read this
information like what we're doing tonight. It's in there going, I got an idea. Okay, now what do you think? And
I'll
then
read
the
it when
other
I get to Joe Dispenza. I'll read it when I get to Joe.
Oh, yeah, you
No, when
must
I get
do
to
that.
Joe Dispenza. Each cell has a purpose. Matter, like it goes and it does whatever it does in our bodies. Matter is energy. We are projections from the field. Now, this was an interesting concept. I hope I can explain it right. It's like this is energy. Like my body is energy that's being held together basically by my consciousness, which is basically in the field. And so I'm just a projection. We're just projections. I know. It's like really, I know she's like,
So be careful how you project is what I always say.
And so our consciousness is actually, that's why when our consciousness leaves our bodies, we don't have bodies anymore. They die, right? But it's our consciousness that's activating that, but it's in the field.
Yeah.
It makes sense when I think about it. It's hard to explain, but yeah.
Because you have to feel it. I believe it has to be felt. And because this can only handle so much before we have to incorporate it inside our field.
Like
we
we're
are the field.
ripples, like we're waves of consciousness in this mass, network. Greg Braden calls it the divine matrix. We're just each of us. That's why we're so connected. That's why there's oneness, because we can't do something without affecting the rest of the field. It's science, mind, and spirit. We have self-receptors that are receiving information from the field subject to our own interpretation. We've said that a million times. And then he goes into awakening the system with joy. And I don't know why I put that there, but he went, all of a sudden he goes, do you know there's 300,000 deaths a year from pharmaceutical drugs?
Well, I just wants to let you know. But let's not overlook this important point. Joy, awakening the joy. That, I would say, was another driving message from every single person, that the joy is an active, even as I'm saying it to you right now, my entire body is vibrating at that idea of joy, and not because joy is its own, activator. It activates things and moves things. I think I'm channeling Bruce Lipton right now. Wouldn't that be fun?
I wish we could get him here.
Wouldn't that be fun? Sunday will be a great day.
I wish he could come and give every one of us a hug. He's so sweet. He's like so brilliant and so sweet. And just think, these people went against their. Even Greg Braden, he was like in the corporate world, and the guy and his boss said, you can't do both. You can't be in the spiritual world and the corporate world at the same time. and he had a great awakening. He decided he was going to go do what he did, and there he is
There
now.
he is.
And same thing with him. He was ostracized by all his colleagues because of his discoveries about
well,
stem cells and
biology
stuff.
of belief. It wasn't until later that he became a superstar with that. When it was first written, it was like, here's our joke man called Dr. Lipton, and so nobody would even take him seriously until later on they were going, Dr. Lipton, can we have a discussion? And all of a sudden they were like, you might be onto something.
Well, that is the other thing they said. There's peer-reviewed science.
Right.
It's peer-reviewed, but it's not in the textbooks. It's not in the regular magazines that doctors read and stuff like that. It's kept out.
Right.
You answer. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
they're a
crazy.
big thing about our kids. They're not being taught the truth
They're
about.
still
and
being taught
It's not a
Newtonian science.
conspiracy. It's just, I mean, even in our science of mind and different things that we see in a curriculum, that Rita and I will read it and we'll go, when the hell was this written? You know, it's not. This doesn't pertain any longer, and because we've already advanced into knowing we're even more than
So
that. Yeah.
I would like to have a school where we teach our kids this kind of stuff. Like,
Well,
why-
that's
I mean,
what
why
we
are
want.
we?
School
Why are
of
we still,
choices, we
Why are
wanna
we
call it.
still teaching our children the way that we learned, 50 years ago, or at least some of us, 50 years ago? We're teaching them
25 to some of us.
I don't understand. I don't understand. We have so many problems because of that. Anyway,
Yes.
you can read more about Bruce on his website. All right. Oh yeah, he would go. They went through this whole
Oh,
thing
yeah.
about most of disease is caused by trauma, toxins, and thought, physical, chemical, and emotional, which signals our proteins, which signals the behavior of our genes and all of that. But there's only like 1% or 2%. I don't know what these figures are because I thought he said 2%. But anyway, 1% of disease which is caused by heredity, and I don't remember what those diseases are. But everything else, the rest of them is all about that trauma, toxins, and thought.
Another
Mostly thought.
another through line with all of them, which is kind of they're my peeps when they talk like this. They are really big. You can feed yourself everything that is absolutely perfect and still get sick, because it's not just the food we're digesting, it's all of the other stuff. And I'm probably more on that end, and I need to learn more about the food end perhaps. But all I know is that every single doctor that came up, Anita, who's left her body and came back again, has all said the same thing. If you are not feeding yourself with love, you're feeding yourself with fear. And fear and stress makes us sick.
Well, we don't want to be afraid of food.
No.
If we're afraid of food, it makes sense, right? Because we
Yeah.
get afraid. You'll see, because
Yeah.
when Anita Marjani talks about it more. So there's the little receptors.
More from Bruce.
The field is, and then they
Look at
kept
him.
quoting Albert
Look at him.
Einstein
This
that
guy's too much.
that the field is the sole governing agency of the particle, and he changed it to of the body. He used the metaphor of a TV that we're responsible for turning the dial the way we want it turned. My mind is interpretation of my environment. My mind is an interpretation of my. One thing about his PowerPoints, oh my God, they're so like creative. Like he has things flashing, cells dancing across this thing.
Because he's gotten a little Hollywood.
I know.
He's gotten Hollywood.
Function of mind is to create a cohesiveness between beliefs and reality. Anyway, that's Dr.
Yeah,
Bruce.
his metaphor, and I like that idea of different dials because it makes sense. We're all in this room, right? And we're all interpreting life differently. Each person's interpreting this experience that we're having completely different than one another. Yeah, we have a general idea. This is what Rita and Patrick are up here. But all of you are right now, the field's coming in. You got your antennas going. You're thinking about whatever. I mean, whatever it is. But it's your individual interpretation of it. Joe.
Now, I had second thoughts about Joe. I just want to let you know that.
Rita had a little.
You cannot get
thing
near
with
Joe. And the only reason I have any of these pictures is because I didn't know he didn't want his picture taken. So he was very strict. He could not get near him. I did get my autograph, but it was turned to the page that he wanted to autograph it on, and it was given to him by his assistant, and I just kind of stood there, and there was no hugs, there was no nothing, because he is a rock star.
It
Now,
was the man behind
And the funny part about
curtain.
him, that the whole thing, we told you how we stood in line every day, right? So we stood in line because we wanted to be, and we were in the front row.
Always in the
And then
front.
what does he do? He does his whole thing from back here. So we spent our whole time turned around.
And this is Rita, just because we're family. This is this is Rita. So Rita's sitting there going, now he's going over there. And I said, well, what did you want to do? Go walk with him? I mean, because
was mad.
because she was like sitting there. We got the perfect thing. He's like
thought
going
I
to
had
be
the
right
best
here,
seat.
right? And she's like, and then she's like, she goes, where the hell's he going? And the whole time he was out there, and I said, oh my gosh.
I just couldn't believe it.
She's still
Anyway, I don't need to read his bio. Most of us, does anybody not know who he is? It's all right. Don't be embarrassed if you don't. But we studied him, we took our whole self-mastery class and studied the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which I feel like is one of his easiest books to understand.
He was still brilliant. I mean, he just wasn't accessible like
Oh
the
no,
rest
he was
of them
wonderful.
were.
I mean,
They
he
were all-
was
yeah,
he was wonderful. He made lots of jokes. He loved to make jokes, and he's so clear when he talks. You understand everything he's saying. He's amazing.
But he once again isn't going to apologize for any. And trust me, we had question and answers that were everywhere from somebody who was contemplating suicide. Everything we had
Oh,
some
that was-
really powerful stuff, and I mean, can you imagine though? It's 1,200 people, and my thing is, somebody needs to go to her and take care of her.
A girl came up in the Q&A, and she was falling on the floor, sobbing because she had lost her child,
Right.
and she wanted to kill herself. And she said, "Who's to tell me in this audience that I can't kill myself?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." Okay.
Then I went, I am,
And
because I'm a
so
mandated reporter.
Who did they hand? Who did they hand
Yeah.
the mic to Dr. Joe, and he talked to her for like 15 minutes. I don't know what happened after that, but it was a
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, well,
publicly.
she
Well,
was standing in line.
She was in
you know.
public. She was telling all of us
Yeah.
that she was going to kill her. No.
No.
He just talked her down. I don't know if he talked her down. I don't know
Because
what
there were
happened to
6
her
of them
after.
sitting up there when the question came in.
And they just
Once
handed
you-
him the mic because
Yeah.
he does that thing about the emotions being lodged in the body, and and that you're addicted to that emotion of that sorrow and that pain, and there's nothing wrong with feeling pain for your child. That's normal, but there also is a way out of it. Do you want to stay there or do you not? Do you want to come out of it? And would your child want you to be?
And I think Anita
upset.
jumped in too, because
Yeah,
she
Anita
was up
jumped in
there,
too,
so she was a good person.
But
to do
anyway, that was like a really amazing moment. I was just like, wow. So his whole thing is about changing the habit of being yourself, which is to create a new personality, basically, through his processes of meditation that he uses, and to leave the old personality behind, because he says the cancer can't live in a new like his big thing is, is curing disease right now. It can't live in a new mind. It cannot live. So his process that he does is helping to people, and he does these advanced retreats with thousands of people that come, and some of them are terminal, they've been given death's door, and they have no other option, and they go here and they're healed. People are healed from Parkinson's, all kinds of things, because I mean, the other thing is it's accessible, because even if you can't get to his advanced retreats, all his meditations are online. You can buy them. He's just got this method that's working. It's working, and it's taking people into the field and becoming nobody, no one, no thing, leaving behind their old personality and creating a new life for themselves, and therefore their diseases are healing. It cannot live in a new mind. And then now he's saying, like, why wait for the disease when you can change your program before it's created? So his whole thing is healing people, and his big thing is he wants to go and heal children in the hospitals. That's what he really wants to do. That's going to be his ultimate thing. And he's created a meditation tape for kids, which I thought was really cool. Go ahead.
But still back to this. It's very, at least in my mind, it's very tricky when you go to somebody else to think that they are going to heal you, because they're not going to heal you. but they're going to give you an avenue for you to heal yourself. Because I do believe, and this philosophy believes, that the healer and the healed are the same. And so that's what he believes as well. But the point of it is he can take you all the way to the field. He can take you right in.